Here we are. Let's go ahead and get started with the Q&A session. So first of all, I'll go ahead and send this one out to Prudence. Prudence, how do you present yourself if you haven't worked in a professional environment for 5 or 10 years?
Wow. Okay, so if you've been out of the professional arena for a while, it's interesting. I was reading a Wall Street Journal article this morning about that, and about companies reaching out to women who have left the workplace to raise a family, and they're trying to get them back in. So it's kind of fresh in my mind. And again, one of the things you want to do is network, and you also want to do a lot of reading of professional magazines and other professional publications. You want to know what's hip and what's in. You know, let's say you haven't been to a certain place on vacation and you're planning to go there. You're going to do some research so that when you get there, you can fit in and you don't feel too much like a tourist, and you can really enjoy the experience. The same goes for your professional experience and your career. You want to make sure that you do some research. You reach out to some individuals that can help you, whether it be the look or whether it be connections with the right individuals in an organization, because though you've been out of the workforce, I'm sure you don't want to start over. You want to still be able to get in and prove yourself and really find a good fitting. But to be able to do so, you really need to connect with the right people, and networking goes a long way.
Thank you, Prudence. Gretchen, do you have anything to add to her response?
I would just say that you need to also illustrate not only what you've learned, but what you've been doing on a business front. And if it has been nothing direct, then you need to talk about whether it's courses you've taken, what you've read, how you've kept yourself current with what's going on, and then what skills that could be utilized in the position you're looking for that you have utilized and honed in the last few years. So even if you weren't in a professional setting, what are some of the skills that you would need for that job, and then give some illustrations. So if maybe, again, the example is given if you're home raising a family perhaps, well, we all know that takes a whole lot of different skills. But what are some of those skills that you can actually talk about and give concrete examples that can be applied to a new position? I mean, better would be things that would more directly relate to a role, but you need to call in anything possible that makes you relevant and current.
Perfect. Thank you, Gretchen. I've got a bunch of other questions that have come in. This is great. We'll go ahead and move ahead to this one, and I'll ask maybe Chip to give his impression first, and then we'll move on. Chip, when looking at resumes and considering candidates, do you typically go to their Facebook page, their LinkedIn, Twitter, anything like that?
I probably do not as much as I have a suspicion that other recruiters do. I have definitely gone to their LinkedIn, for sure. I do not look at Facebook. I just don't want to go down that road. I know there are some recruiters that I think believe there's value there, but I don't do that. What I'm really looking for, I think, is a lot of what was already mentioned. I'm just looking for something that's professional, something that is well written and free of errors. And I think LinkedIn can tell you a lot as well, but Facebook, Twitter, no. But that doesn't mean that if I were looking, I wouldn't have all of those bases covered, which is sort of tricky because some of those mediums borderline more on social than professional. So, you know, if you're looking for a job, you may just need to rethink exactly, again, like I was alluding to before, what are you saying to everybody? You probably have to monitor it.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Gretchen, what do you think about this? Do you think that, you know, maybe some clients that you work with, do you think that they are typically using things like Facebook or Twitter or even LinkedIn to evaluate candidates that you send?
100%, regardless of how I feel about it, because I feel similarly to what Chip feels, or how Chip feels. But people are looking. People are constantly looking. And look, again, in this environment, yes, they're looking for the current skills, but everybody is looking for the right person for the job, the right person for the culture, the right person to fit in with the rest of the team. So when they're going and looking at something like Facebook, hey, you know what? For one particular company, the picture of you doing a keg stand might be appropriate. For somebody else, the picture of the fact that you just traveled to Paris, and you have, you know, for someone else, the picture on Facebook you have with your kids might be appropriate, or it might not. But people are absolutely looking at that regularly. Again, I don't think it should be as relevant, but in this day and age when everything is out there for everybody to see, it is relevant. People are looking. So your brands, back to Chip's point, everything, what you should do, honestly, is you should Google yourself. You should put your name, your maiden name, your current name, your nickname, put it into Google, see what comes up. Hopefully all of it is like, wow, that's really me. Oh my gosh, that shows that I won such and such award a number of years ago. But there's some things that are going to come up that you don't really want people to see. When you are interviewing for a job, everything changes, and you need to make sure that every single thing that someone can find from your ringtone, I know I'm speaking to hopefully mostly folks who would not have a silly email address or a ringtone, but everything from start to finish needs to be professional and needs to support the fact that you would be someone that a new position would really want to have on their team, that they could trust, that they could, you know, commit their money and their time to bringing on.
You know, I think those are great pointers. It's pretty clear that social media is just so prevalent in every aspect of the job search, and I think it's, I certainly appreciate that both of you were pretty candid about that particular question. I'm going to go ahead and move on to this one, and it pertains specific to interviewing, so I'd like to ask Prudence to address this one. What types of questions would you expect to be asked by a candidate during an interview?
Well, that's a good one. So I'm glad that the thought process is that there should be questions asked, because sometimes when I open up an interview for questions, you know, I get the, oh, you covered it all answer, which I never cover it all. So questions that I like to be asked are about the culture of the organization, the direction of the organization, individuals who are looking at the position as a career and long term will want to make sure that this is an organization that's not only a fit for them, but they want to think long term. So an individual who is interested in the culture and interested in the company's stability and growth, that's a signal to me that this individual is thinking long term. The questions about benefits and salary, I like to see those towards the end. I like to see those types of questions when a decision is being made that this person is in the final stages of the interview process or towards an offer. So those shouldn't be the first questions that are presented there. Also, questions about the person who is doing the interview, you know, their walk, so to speak, with the organization. That tells that person is taking this seriously and want to know how another individual views the organization, how long they've been there, and what is their impression. If it's a position that is a replacement for someone else, finding out why that individual left, and I have to be honest, sometimes you'll get the global high-level answer, which can be a red flag sometimes, and you know, maybe there's something wrong with that particular person or with the position, why there's turnover. But finding out exactly what you're getting into is very important. And if it's a newly created position, you really want to drill down on the vision of the organization and why the position was created, to make sure that it's not just a test that could run out, but it really is a position that is good for you and one that would be good for you not only today but long term.
Those are all great ideas, and you know, I'm glad that was a question we got as well, because I think that's a lot of times when candidates are preparing for interviews, they forget about that piece of it and making sure that they have some ideas about what they would ask the interviewer toward the end. So thank you, Prudence. Sure. This next one, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to throw this one to Chip and see, just because he mentioned this a few times in his remarks. Chip, do you think that a cover letter is necessary to have? Can't candidates just include a paragraph on the top of their resume instead?
Okay, I think that's a good question. And if you don't mind, Shannon, can I just I want to add just real quickly to what Prudence's answer was. Sure. I thought she gave some good points. So if somebody, I know that this is really sort of behind the scenes tips, and if one of the top tips I would give is you have to ask questions. probably, I would say, 50 to 60% of the time when I hear back from hiring managers and they just aren't necessarily 100% sure about a candidate, 95% of the time it's because they didn't ask any questions. If you take one thing away from this webinar, take that. And I agree with what Prudence said. You can never, and this is probably one of the most important things, you can never say that, oh, you covered everything. You need to have some good, high-quality, generic questions that you can ask that still make it seem like you've got your thinking cap on. So you really want to spend some time on this. You want to ask questions that are relevant. And I think the only thing I would maybe differentiate myself a bit from Prudence is that make sure that the questions fit the rhythm of the conversation and where you are in terms of the stage of the interview. There are times when I've had candidates push it a little too much and they start drilling down to the point where it's just too specific, too early. But again, this is very, very subjective. A couple of generic questions, just real quick. Things like, what would you consider to be success, let's say 30, 60, 90 days out? What sort of general attributes do you feel would make somebody very successful in this role? Think of some fallback questions that you can ask. You have to ask questions, period. It's crucial. In terms of the
one thing, Gretchen, I'm sorry. May I add, is that all right? What I wanted to say about that too is with the questions, look, the first interview is still more about them, not you. The first interview is more about the client, not about you. So you need to make sure that you are actively listening. And as Chip said, make sure it follows the flow. But make sure you're also asking questions that have to do with what the whole interview was about. Okay. Don't have preformed questions that you don't see how they would relate to what they're looking for and what the job is. And then to that next point, it's still about trying to figure out if you're smart, if you're a good fit for the company, if you have the right skills. So your questions, in some ways, they don't care what the questions are, they care how they're asked. And of course they do care what they are, but they need to illustrate that you have a good thought process. That's why they're saying to you, what questions do you have for me? Done, thanks.
Yeah, I would agree completely, and I think that, okay, so you guys probably have got that. Okay, cover letter. Listen, the dirty little secret, I think, from an HR perspective is that I think the cover letters are incredibly relevant in very specific situations. If you are a career changer, a well-written cover letter makes sense. It gives a little clarification and it sort of course corrects to your resume. So in other words, if your background is A and you're looking to get into B, that cover letter helps to sort of shape the direction. So I think that is where you can draw out some common skills that might be relevant to this new role. So I think the cover letter can add value there. Any position where you are going to be considered, or you are going to be required to write, it's absolutely critical. Will I stand here and tell you that most HR people read every cover letter? Absolutely not. They just don't, and they just don't. But that's not to say that there isn't value in it. And that's not to say that if they say, please include a cover letter, you need to include a cover letter. If there's no cover letter required, you certainly can embed in your email just a nice sort of introduction, maybe just high level, sort of give a quick snapshot of what you're about. But again, I think it relates to what kind of position am I applying for. If you're applying for a PR position, advertising might be more relevant. If you're applying to HR, could very well be relevant. So it just depends sort of what you're doing. And again, if you are going to put something on paper, it better be really good. Almost better not to have a cover letter if you don't write a good cover letter. But if they say that it's required and you don't have it, it's game over. Because I have seen, just as a quick side note, as it relates to what you put when you put pen to paper, I've seen more people, because I was at an agency as well early on in my career, I've seen at least 3 or 4 instances where the thank you note either had an error in it or they misspelled the company, and that particular candidate's opportunity went away. It was not going to happen.
Another question that we just received, you got to love this in real time. You just mentioned at the end of your response about a thank you letter. Just a quick yes or no from each of you. Do you expect a follow-up thank you note after a candidate interview?
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. Prudence says that.
I'm sorry.
I don't think everybody does, but What if you get the one person you don't send a thank you letter to and they require one? Yes, it should be short. It should be about 3 paragraphs. The first, thank you for interviewing me for the position of blah. I was very interested to hear about blah, blah, blah. Second paragraph, I think I'm a good fit for this job, or based on what we talked about, a couple of lines, 3 max, about why your skills fit what you discussed. Last, thank you again for your time. I look forward to the next steps. If you need, contact me. Here is my contact information. Period. End of story. It's fine to embed it in the email. If you want to go ahead and send a personal thank you letter, I think it's fine. But in this day and age, I think it could get there too late. And I think it's also fine to send the thank you letter the next day. But if you write a poor thank you letter, you may as well say goodbye to the opportunity.
Yeah, interesting. Chip, what do you think?
I think the reality of the situation is that a thank you note will very, very rarely get you a job, but I think that you should absolutely do it. To me, interviewing is about playing the percentages. It depends. It's very subjective, and I think that what Gretchen just alluded to, there's some hiring managers, if they love you and they think you can add value and you really blew them away on the interview and there's chemistry, if you sent a thank you letter or not, it's not going to change. But it's always better to send a very short, very, very well-written thank you note that at least just shows that you're interested in the role. So I would always recommend a very, very quick thank you note. But again, please make sure that you have somebody read it because, like Gretchen said, if it's not good, you will not get the position.
Yeah, you want to make sure that you don't talk yourself out of a job that you were otherwise had a good chance of for.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and just, I'll go ahead and do 2 more questions. We've been getting a number of questions in, and I'll go ahead and just pause real quickly and let everyone know that if I don't cover your question today, you're welcome to either reach out to me directly so we could talk a little bit more about it, or if you would like, the panelists have indicated that it would be okay with them if you follow up directly. But instead of sharing their contact information, I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult and ask that you search for them and reach out to them via LinkedIn. And they have all agreed that it would be okay with them. So if I don't cover your question or you think of something else that you would like to ask one of the panelists, you know, I encourage you to do so and use LinkedIn for that. But we'll go ahead and finish out with 2 final questions. Okay, this is a good one, kind of a little bit off of anything else we've talked about today. We'll start with Prudence and then Chip for this one. Prudence, do you think that job fairs are a useful way for someone to conduct a job search?
Yes, I think that with job fairs, you're definitely getting in front of individuals, and I've done a lot of job fairs where I have attended as an HR professional, networking with other HR professionals, but also being at a booth where I'm representing my organization. And I think it's a great way to network, but it's also a great way to get in front of an individual who's probably not the hiring manager, but works directly with the hiring manager. So when it comes to job fairs, presentation is important. You do not want to walk in jeans, you know, pulling along your puppy. You want to make sure that you go professionally and that you have your portfolio with your resumes ready and that you're asking the questions about the opportunity, you're reviewing the job postings, and you're presenting your resume in a professional manner and asking about the follow-up process. And the difference with job fairs and actually applying for positions with organizations is that you have someone in front of you where you can get all those questions answered. You can find out what the hiring process is, what the length of time is, what's the best way to follow up. And you can literally take notes at that point to determine how you follow up with the jobs that are of interest to you. Most larger job fairs are very specific. They're well advertised, and individuals who attend find great success. But I think that it is hard work. You're walking around usually a convention center, and you have to pick out the jobs and the opportunities that are right for you. But I think it's absolutely rewarding in the end.
Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and just sort of interject a related question, and then I'll turn it over maybe to Chip for this one. A lot of times candidates say to me that when they attend job fairs, it's frustrating because they go to a booth and the person says to them, apply online, and they wonder what's the point of attending a job fair if they're just being told to apply online anyway. Do you have anything to sort of tell what the story is behind that, Chip?
Yes, usually there's legal reasons for that. There are some companies that have a strict policy where they won't take resumes outside, or ideally they won't take resumes outside of the database. And the database serves a purpose for the company too. It's a repository. They can build up a pipeline of candidates. So what I would say in that case, and it is frustrating. I mean, it's very frustrating. You're sitting there, and I think Prudence said it best. It's hard work. It is no fun. But I think you just have to remain positive. Absolutely no problem. I will do so. And if possible, you might be able to get their card and just send them an email. And listen, I just wanted to thank you for meeting you at the or spending some time with me at the job fair. I went ahead and applied online for the position, and I look forward to hopefully hearing from you. And that's fine, you know. But that's really what this is. So it's not a blow off. Although, you know, truth be told, sometimes it's not the best sign, but I think that more often than not, it's just simply that companies want to keep everything in their database for legal reasons.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and do a final question, and if all three of you have sort of an idea about this one. This is a question that I actually heard the other day as well. As an employer, and as you likely know, we do have a number of students taking online degree programs here at SPS. That being said, I'd love your honesty. As an employer, how do you feel about people who earn their college degrees online? Gretchen, why don't you go ahead and start with your opinion on that?
It is all dependent upon what the company, what the hiring manager thinks. To be honest, the truth is, it is better to have. It's definitely better to have your bachelor's than to have nothing. So to that point, kudos. If that's how you have your bachelor's, you know, at the end of the day, you have it, and that's what's important. Some employers do view it as, you know, maybe not as strong as going to an in-person college, but again, it's all dependent. I have companies I work with who insist upon Ivy League educations. And that's great. My belief is that they're being a little bit short-sighted, but if that's what they want, that's what they want. And no matter how much you try to change that, it's not going to, you know, it's not going to influence them differently. The fact is, you just need to continue to give yourself the best possible experience, work for brand name companies, don't be jumpy in your in moving from one company to another, you know, really be able to clearly articulate your skills and your experience, not only in written format, but also verbally. Do all the right things, and you know what, that is what it is, and a company is going to have to decide personally what they think of that. If that is what you have, don't get too hung up on it, but some things you can't change. If a company says it's not what they want, well, you know what, move on and find the better opportunity for you.
Chip, do you have any opinion on that?
Well, I do, because I have a master's degree from Villanova that I received online. So, listen, I think that the one thing that I would say to everybody out there is, you know what, just make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're working closely with career services. You've got some good advisors in your life, and just keep pushing forward. I think that Gretchen alluded to it. If some people don't like that, then that's fine, you know. But I think that there's a lot of value in all education, no matter how it was accomplished. The online programs now are much, much more interactive than they ever were before. And the simple fact is, if you get in front of somebody, they probably won't know that you went online. And if they happen to ask or whatever, if you say, I did go online, and this is what I would say. So, oh, I see you got your master's degree from Villanova. You know, I did get my master's degree from Villanova. It was a great, great experience. I found the professors were incredibly engaged. We got great insight from people across the country, and it really gave me exposure to different schools of thought other than just in the Northeast. The work was arduous. The tests were all timed, so I really felt it was a robust, certainly comprehensive program, which I really think I benefited a lot from. And I think that from that program, there's a lot of value that I can bring in my particular role into an organization. So have confidence in what you did, whether it was online, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you went to a CUNY school or you went to Harvard. If you're passionate and you can articulate the value that you can offer, that will supersede all else.
Thank you,
And
Chip. I appreciate you sharing your own sort of personal story about it as well. Prudence,
and
what do you
I'm,
think?
I'm sorry, Shannon. Yeah, I'll do the same as well. A third of my MBA was actually obtained online. And if I had it to do all over again, I would go in the classroom because I found that doing it online was a lot more difficult. There was no one there right then to answer the questions when you were working through. So I have a lot of respect for individuals who do an entire degree online because it was just very difficult for me. I ran into, a lot of travel within the organization that I was with at that time, and I thought that doing it online would work well with that. It was so much more difficult. So from a personal perspective, it doesn't bother me if a degree is obtained online or in the classroom because I do know how difficult it is to take online courses, and I know about the deadlines and the timings, and I feel that it's so much more strict. And I also feel that you're a lot more independent. Some of the attention that you need, sending an email or making a phone call, is a lot different than being in the classroom and just raising your hand to ask a question. So I've never in my entire career have anyone say to me, was your degree online or otherwise? That has never come up. I think once did I ever have a background check where my degree was actually, I needed to bring in information to prove my degree in GPA and things like that. But I think that overall, it's just a matter of having a degree if the job requires one, and not so much of how you obtain it or which school you obtained it through.
I think all of you make really important points with that, and I will just sort of share this as a final note. I think a lot of it depends on you as an individual and how you explain what the degree is that you're earning, and that goes into play whether it's in person in the classroom or an online degree. But a lot of it is how you articulate what you've learned, and if it is online, how you describe the way that the program was set up and the certain skill sets and competencies that you may have developed by attending school online that you might not have developed in the in-person environment. So, I think a lot of it depends on the individual and, again, how you brand it and how you present it yourself. Well, as I had said before, I wish that we could talk all day and answer all of the questions that have come in. We've really gotten some good ones that we've heard from you. I would like to take a moment to thank all three of you. I really appreciate the time, Chip, Gretchen, and Prudence, that you've spent with us today on the webinar, and I hope that it's been a worthwhile experience for you. And I hope to see or speak with all of you on another program from SPS again soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.